Welcome into this week's holiday edition of Midweek's Adjustments. It's a very important week, Thanksgiving. Frosty the Snowman's on TV, and there's a little football game being played in the capital city that I think we all know.
We finally are getting to the main course.
We're finally
right?
getting to it. Yeah,
finally.
the main course.
Yes.
You've been heading on to that last week.
I've been waiting. Been waiting.
Well, good. You got
ready to pounce.
You did. You did. Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you this. We know they're making history this week. First time both these teams have been in the top 10. The one thing that seems to be absent from this that used to always be there in the years past, there doesn't seem to be that vitriol seeping into this rivalry. It just seems like, hey, this is a big game. Let's go play.
Well, yeah. Well, I think you had Steve Spurrier say a few things before, and then Dabo Swinney kind of countered after they had just been thrashed by South Carolina again on the way to the ACC championship game 2 years ago, which was odd timing. But then that continued to fuel all of last year. And then South Carolina was able to win again, and it's been pretty quiet for the past year. You know, you don't have the full barbs that are going back and forth. Steve Spurrier has had a bit of fun at Dabo's expense, but Swinney,
have, I think.
Yeah, but I think Dabo is. I think he's understood kind of where things are, and both have been very complimentary. You know, in terms of where each other is right now. When you're both in the top 10, Brian, I mean, it's pretty hard to bash.
How much fun can you really poke at
It's really hard to
somebody?
bash the other guy right now, but it's tremendous for both of these. And we talked with Tommy Suggs, the longtime color commentator for Gamecock Broadcast earlier today, and a guy that played for South Carolina. And he was a Clemson fan growing up, and then wound up playing for South Carolina. How many guys are like that in the rivalry? I mean, there's more than you think in that one. But for him, to see somebody that's been around it for a long time, and to truly understand from his perspective what it means to see two teams in the top 10 for the first time ever, it's a big deal. And even then, it's a big deal here, but still nationally. The Iron Bowl. Oh well, Alabama and Auburn still happen to be a top five matchup with national title implications. But nonetheless, South Carolina and Clemson. This is the biggest rivalry game in the history of the 111 years that they played. I
have a feeling it's going to live up to everything we think it's going to be as well. If I'm Taj Boyd, thinking about this game coming up, I've got more than 50 Clemson records. I've got all these ACC records, but the one thing I haven't done is I haven't beaten South Carolina, and he hasn't played particularly well against South Carolina either.
Yeah, I mean, he's been cool and calm and collected in a lot of situations, but against better teams, he's been able to get a little jumpy, get the happy feet sometimes, and doesn't necessarily play as well. There's been some games this season against lesser opponents where it's not necessarily his fault. I think his offensive line has shuffled around a bit this year, and so in games against NC State or a Boston College or a Maryland, obviously we know what happened with Florida State, but even Georgia Tech, we've seen him put up some good numbers in those games, but he's also gotten knocked around a pretty good bit. South Carolina still has a pretty good defensive line. Steve Spurrier mentioned earlier this week that maybe their pass rush hasn't been as good as they would have hoped for it to be. I think that's a little subtle public motivation that he's going to have for his guys there. That's what has won this thing for South Carolina these last couple of years, especially since Clemson moved themselves to Chad Morris's offense and the tempo offensive system, is finding ways to create pressure against Taj Boyd. If they can recreate that again this week, then of course you like South Carolina's chances. But as good as their defense has been, it's their offense that maybe has been their best defense the last couple of years against this Clemson offense.
Got about a minute or so left. Not going to ask you to make a prediction on this one, but if let's say this is going down to the fourth quarter, it's a one-score game at that point, where do you think the edge goes to? Who gets the advantage in a game? Let's say it's a 3 or 7 point game last quarter.
Well, I think that for South Carolina, the fact that they are undefeated at home in the last 2 years, they've won 17 in a row, they've got guys that have been in close games. They had to go to Missouri and come back from 17 down. Clemson is a good football team, and they won a close game earlier this year against Georgia, but that's kind of way back in August, and how much do we know about teams from 2 months ago at the start of the season? I think that we haven't seen Clemson have to do that enough, and especially in an opponent's home environment. If it's a one-score game in the fourth quarter, I think the mental edge at least goes to South Carolina.
Well, we're going to find out in just a few short days, and you and I will be there front and center for this one, and a whole lot of other people that are watching right now.
Going to be fantastic. It's a lot of fun. Enjoy it.
Yeah, and enjoy your turkey between now and then as well. Michael Haney, you, of course, thank you. We're thankful for you here at Watch Fox each and every week.
I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
It has been a lot of fun. Thank you very much, sir. And folks, that's going to do it for this week's Midweek Adjustments.